So before you
Oh
disappear
yeah.
again, please catch us up to date on your whole adventure to the Gulf of Deliria. We were following you
Yeah.
all the way there. You can't go without filling us in on
Well,
all the
yeah,
details.
I wrote a little bit of a blog about it. It was kind of
It's a
funny
good
because
one.
like so I'm going up to Frisco, and then I know that like I'm gonna help out a little bit. So Ari's like, oh, come early and blah blah blah, and then I'm like, okay, cool, I'll show up early. And so I show up early, and then at first I'm just like, I don't really know anybody, and like, and then I'm like gonna, and then I was like, I was pretty fine, but those weird little thoughts is like, oh, I was like, I had to explain myself, and then I'm like, I know, are you? Believe me, I'm SatoriD. And then so I none of that happened because like the first person I meet is Pizza T, who does the music, and he goes, oh, Satori, and I'm like, hey, what's up, dude? And then like from there it was just like I wrote in that blog is like cheers, everybody knew my name, and then I see, are you, and are you recognizes me and goes, hey, what's up, thanks for coming, blah blah blah, and then like it gives me like some like well, actually at that point he doesn't, because they're gonna practice their set. So I just kind of sat in the back and then talked to some of the Pizza Tea crew, and they were actually coming from the Bitcoin conference. I don't know if they were. I think if my memory serves me right, there was like some all shitcoin conference that Pizza Tea performed at. What's actually also kind of weird and exciting, and I guess I'll drop this news here, is that Pizza Tea was getting followed around by like they're doing a documentary, not necessarily about him, but he's like featured in the a documentary. What is it called? It's about like basically meme coins.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so like Pizza Tea has a lot of different meme coins, and so he's part of like I think they follow a few of people doing stuff like that. Anyways, so like the camera guy was there. I might even be in it because like there
Ooh.
was one point where Pizza
Nice.
Tea's like, oh hey, this is SatoriD, and I wave at the camera like, hey, what's up, everybody? And then he's like, oh, let's go check out the robot, because like they had like all these like kind of like props. RU had a throne. There's like this little robot, and so like we go with the camera guy, and then we check out the robot, and then
Nice.
talk about the set and stuff like that. But anyways, so there's like this documentary that, and I know that the music video that I did for DJ and Friends is going to be featured in there, so that was cool.
Ooh.
Um,
Wow, is that the
but
guy,
like
the one
what?
about what will you wear
New
to the
Civil War?
new
No,
Civil War?
no, it's
No,
DJ
different one.
and Friends.
Okay.
That's one was Too Desperate to Be Paranoid.
Oh,
Um, yeah,
okay.
and so that one's going to be featured in that documentary, I
Cool.
believe, if memory serves me right. But so then I was just chilling, and then that's when like people started getting there that were going to speak, and so it was it's so funny about like I mentioned like in chat and in my blog that there was a lot of audio issues, right? And within the vacuum we'll probably know this is like any live event with like audio systems, theaters, clubs, live audience, it's a shit show.
Hmm.
And so like when we're warming up Pizza T was like, oh, because he does I think for most of the songs, I'm trying to think if it's all the songs, I don't know, there's a few songs where he does like auto tune, so he wanted like the sound level is like a certain way, and then it wasn't doing it anyways, so they're messing with it a lot. So by the time the event comes, there was a music set, and then there was speaking, right? And so by the time I was up there introducing everything, like, man, I couldn't tell like if the back of the room could hear me, because like I could, like, that's all I could hear. It was a
Mm.
pretty big
Wow.
space, and then it was just like it's just like if you're in a club and you're trying to talk to your friends and you're just like I can't even hear like my own voice.
Wow.
And then so I just like, welcome to the Gulf of Delirium, and I kind of like just try to project my voice. I think everybody who's sitting can.
Lost your voice there.
Hey, what happened?
Yeah, you
He
got
was
caught.
telling too much. He was silenced by the conspiracy.
The glitch.
He was saying too much. Dun dun
The
dun.
gremlin.
Yeah.
The gremlins got
And
you.
then it was kind of funny because like people that were wanting to hear him speak started to move like closer, and so they like people were sitting in the front and they're telling people to shut up in the back, and the people in the back weren't even paying attention. And there was a robot too. There's like this robot going around, and then like if it goes forward, it was fine, but when it rotated, it made like all these sounds, and it had like track wheels, like a tank kind of, and so like it would like stop and go like kind of hydraulics that turned it, and so like but you could hear it, and because it also would like shake, and so that made it more difficult too. So anyways, so there was issues with that, and anyways, so Arya comes in, he tries to like get the attention in the back, it doesn't work, and then he kind of reads, and then but by that time, I think in between the speakers, he was going back and like telling them like, "Yo, like, what's up with the microphone and all this kind of stuff." Anyways, it gets fixed later. By the panel, it was cool, but and this was kind of funny. Like, so I'm like sitting at the side watching the panel, and so they opened up the panel to like questions, and so at this time there was this guy, and like he asked the first question, but he's like and everybody kind of rambles, but like he was rambling before he asked his question, and so like everybody was kind of like, oh man, like just ask your question, like for the first time. And so we go through a series of questions, and then we're about to wind it down, and then he wants to ask another question, and then everybody was like, someone else go up, like like in the crowd. And then I was in the side, and this was kind of like the funny thing about like the glitches and the Gulf of Delirium and having like random experiences and like going with it. Like literally one of my favorite authors, Eric Davis, he wrote High Weirdness. Anyways, he's sitting right next to me. He actually elbows me. And like we were making fun of the guy that was long-winded, and he's asking the question because like someone over there was like, "Oh, you go up there, go say something." And he's like, "No, I don't want to go say anything." I was like, "Please save us." Anyways, it was just funny because like later my sister and went to the show, and then I was telling her about that, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that guy too." Like she was in a different part of the audience, and they were doing like the similar things, like rolling their eyes like, oh no, not this guy again.
Wow.
It was funny, and then it was funny because like I didn't catch exactly what he said, and I wish I did, but I think he was saying something about like we have a window in like 5 years, and then there's gonna be AGI and like
AGI.
sentience or something like that. I don't know what he actually said, because I was too busy kind of like joking and having a little fun about him asking, that I didn't wasn't paying attention to his question, and only to afterwards. And then it was kind of funny because like one of the guys goes because like I guess his tone was overall like dark or dystopian, and then he goes, "What do you do? Well, if that happens, what makes you think the super intelligence would side with Peter Thiel and the dark side? What makes you think that they wouldn't like contact us and decide with us?" And everybody was laughing, and then I was like, "Wait, did he talk about AI sentience?" And I'm like, "Oh man, I should have like went up there and said something." But anyways, and then someone goes up there and takes the microphone, and then talks about like the kind of like we're all one organism, and like kind of like we're already like now I'm using my terms, already a meta mind. There's already a super intelligence, and it's called Gaia. No, so that was pretty funny. And then like later, going back to like all the like, so what one guy said on the stage about like addressing the kind of glitches and the technical difficulties, the gremlins in the machine. He said it's kind of good in the sense that like, you know, there's one conversation happening here and there's like 3 different things happening in the same event. So like if you were in the back with like say like the robot thing, you're having your own experience and you kind of don't even know what's going on other places. And the same thing with like people were paying attention to the readings or people catching up. But I like what was funny is like I would say I had like a good 4 or 5 random conversations with like people that I've never met before, and like
Nice.
they go, you know, at one point in us just, you know, hanging out and talking, they go, oh yeah, I met Are You Serious, you know, this way or that way. And most of the stories were kind of similar, like you know, back in the 80s or early 90s, this some, you know, 20 something year old person wants to like, you know, go like read something like in Mondo or hear something about what's going on in the Bay Area, and then they're like, you know what, I'm like, one guy was like from Tennessee, so like, I'm gonna go to San Francisco, and then he meets RU, and then like 2 weeks later he's like, you know, doing psychedelics with Timothy Leary. And then I was like, oh, crazy. And like I never been at an event where like, oh, I heard like 5 different stories about like, oh man, I met like within my first couple of days in San Francisco, I went to an Are You Serious event, and then like I smoked DMT and it changed my life. So I met like at least 5 real life DMT assassins bobbed up.
Wow, really? How cool.
Yeah.
Sure.
The funniest story was at the end. So like I said, like, you know, if you go to like a concert, you know, this, and I was telling my sister later, you know, I've been to a bunch of concerts, and more times than not, like the opening acts, like people are not paying attention to them. It's very rare when you get like a really good opening act that like takes over the room, but it's usually like the main event, right? That's when everybody starts paying attention. And so the main event was the panel, and so when they did their second set, like people were leaving, and so it kind of died down a little bit. And then I move up, and you know, I'm rocking out to the songs and all this kind of stuff. And then that's when I talked to this one guy. I met him earlier, but then we weren't really talking. And then he's just like, oh man, about like the visuals, and I before I said, oh yeah, I did some of that, and then we're talking. And then and then later he goes to tell us about like, oh man, Artie's changed my life. And then he tells me about like, literally he comes to Frisco, he sees the flyer, he goes to an event, and then he's with like RU and a bunch of other guys, and then they're at the event, and then they're like smoking weed or whatever. I think Terrence McKenna's there too. And then he goes, so I forgot what he said. I forgot what phrase he said. It's like, so like when are we gonna like do the real drugs or something like that, you know? And then Arya's like, okay, I guess we're going back to my house, and they go to the old Mondo house, and then it said they bring out the DMT, and then it was funny because he's telling me this story about like they do the DMT, and then when it's about to hit, they go hiking, and they go for like this long hike, and then like there's like this eagle that comes or something. He tells me this whole like crazy story, right? And then he gets interrupted because like there's this older guy, and I met him. He was like one of the guys that was part of the first magazine that RU did, and High Frontiers. And he seemed like a real like deadhead, right? But so he comes up, and then the guy goes, "Oh my God, I haven't seen you in forever." And it's like, "Oh, hey, what's up? I was just telling Satori about that time." And he tells him, "Do you remember that?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." And he's just like laughing. And then the guy goes, "Dude, wait, I thought you were dead." And then he goes, "Me?" And he's an older guy. He's like, yeah, man, I could have sworn I heard you were dead. And he's like, oh, no one told me. He went with it. And then I was like, oh, yeah, you must have not got the memo. And then he goes, so I'm dead? Whoa.
Yeah.
It's like conversation like that for